Hey, 40 Years, 40 Year Beers podcast. This is your friend Chad. I've been watching your guys' Stranger Things updates, and noticed that you guys mentioned that you didn't really know that much about Dungeons & Dragons. So I kind of thought maybe I'd drop a line, since I am a Dungeon Master for about 35 years now, and still even playing to this day. Dungeons & Dragons began in 1974, is when it first was released, by a company called TSR. Essentially, somebody really loved Lord of the Rings and wanted to play inside that world in a game, but couldn't get the rights, so they came up with Dungeons & Dragons. It's a free open world, which means you're not just following like Monopoly rules, right? Players can actually come up with their own rules. The Dungeon Master can come up with their own stories. It promotes a lot of creativity. In fact, there's so much so that based on those games came other stories. So TSR would actually release magazines or articles that would come out explaining different games that you can play. Different characters, different monsters, different worlds. And it grew and grew and grew. Stranger Things basically is fighting, the Mind Flayer and Demigorgons. Those are all actual Dungeons & Dragons characters. They both came out around 76, 77, respectively. And of course, they came up out of other games. So the supplemental material, people would read and say, oh, look, here's a Demigorgon. We can use it in our game. I'm not going to go into a lot of the different rules and craziness about Dungeons & Dragons because there's books upon books upon books. Seriously, I have a tub full of things like this. Right, so this is the Dungeon Master Guide. So anybody who wants to become a Dungeon Master, you would need to study this. Literally study it as if it's a school book. The characters that play, or player characters, they create their own characters. So Joe, if you were to play, you could create your own, fighter, wizard, priest, elf. Kind of like you do in video games now, but a little bit more free form. You would come up with the character's background. You would roll for sort of their strengths, weaknesses, etc. There's even guidebooks to help you create characters. So this would be a wizard's one. We have the priest one here. Various things. Now, like I said, it's open world, right? So you don't need a board. Although you could have a board if you wanted. You can actually have a map. Lots of people play with the map. Some people don't. Some people draw their own maps. Some people draw their own dungeons. You're tracking your characters on a character sheet. So this is all of the skills, their name, their race, notes of the game, all kinds of things. You can notice there's even guides of, let's say, enemies or bad guys. Inside of that is something you can see here, the Mind Flayer. There it is. So this is the kind of weaknesses, the scores, what kind of attacks they can do, different things about the Mind Flayer. The examples that I kind of showed right now are from the second edition, which came out in 1989. So Will and all of them, they're not playing that yet. It's my favorite edition. It has the most stuff in it, basically. And I even still play it to this day, that particular edition. Boys on Stranger Things were probably playing the basic set, which came out around 81 and 83. In Stranger Things, there's, obviously different realms, right? Because you have the Upside Down. In Dungeons & Dragons, there's multiple different dimensions and worlds. There's something like Forgotten Realms, which, you can adventure in. There's something called Ravenloft, which is kind of like a more gothic, which have vampires. Season 4 of Stranger Things, which was probably my favorite just because it was a little bit more like my own childhood. Because I grew up exactly during that time when it was heavy metal, was very taboo. Dungeons & Dragons started becoming very taboo. From this book. This was made by a stand-up comedian, completely made up. However, certain people on the religious side and law enforcement actually thought that this was real and started basing a whole lot of fear-based things based on Dungeons & Dragons, heavy metal, anywho. And I'd also like to mention, in Season 4, I don't think you guys brought this up in any recaps necessarily, but Eddie, who was the heavy metal head at the time, obviously probably got his name from Iron Maiden's mascot, Eddie. Also a very popular thing in the 1980s. I hope maybe this helps a little bit. I'm sure I glossed over quite a bit, but I just thought, I'd give you a little lean into, and if you ever want to play Dungeons & Dragons, please hit me up.